ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm going to control your screen, but we're going to be looking at the global and the project administration part of Newforma. And the reason why we do it in your environment is just in case you guys have questions about the settings that are in your environment, we're already here. So that if we need to make changes or if you have specific questions, obviously we can take a look at it right in your live environment. Um, and then, of course, like all of our other trainings, questions along the way, feel free to ask. You guys can always, at least Leslie, you can take control of the screen because it's your monitor, but I'll be driving for most of it. And we'll start with the global administration, and then we'll move into the project administration. Now, the difference between the two is global administrators obviously can change global type settings. So adding new users, changing what appears in a dropdown, um, you know, creating new projects, that kind of thing. And by default, if you are a global administrator, you are automatically a project administrator, which means that on all projects, you can change the settings on those projects. And when we get into the project settings, you'll see what kind of settings we're talking about. But just know that you can make someone a project administrator on an individual project without having to make them a global administrator. So when we see those settings, you'll kind of see the difference between those and maybe make some determinations as to people that you might have as project administrators versus global administrators. So from the task panel here, we're on the My Project Center screen. We'll come to the Project Center administration. And that's what opens up the global administration console. So unless you are a global administrator, you do not even see this option for the Project Center administration. Like a day-to-day user would not see this. So it's not like you have to worry about them accidentally clicking on something and then changing something. And you'll notice, like when we open this up, it does take a couple of seconds to load, longer than just a standard screen. That's normal. And it usually gets faster the more that you open it. For like a particular day. The first time you open it, it will always be slower than any subsequent openings within the same day. And we'll work the tabs here from left to right, some at greater detail than others. But as you can see here, your projects tab would be all of the projects that you currently have set up in Newforma. And you only have a few. You also have your project creation template. So has it been determined internally who's going to be creating projects?
I think it's Nadia and on that side.
Okay.
They can do that, right? They should be, as a project administrators, they should be able to do that. Is that correct?
Yep. If they're well, if they're listed as a project creator, so when we get to the licensing, we'll see who's been set up as a project creator. And just know that you can always add additional people as project creators as like a backup to Nadia. So I'm sure, Nadia, you go on vacation every once in a while, so it would be nice to have a backup person who could also create projects. But we'll kind of go through that process as well. The project creation template is kind of like the default settings. So when I go to create a project, it will ask me if I want to manually enter all of the information or if I want to select a project creation template to help pre-populate some of the information. Now you can have more than one template. So if you have some projects that are set a certain way and others that are set a different way, you could have more than one template in here so that when you're creating a certain project for a certain type of, certain type, you could choose that template to help facilitate the data entry for that particular project. In this case, we're just going to say create, and it will show us the form. And if you have two monitors, it might actually pop up on the other monitor. So just be aware of that. There we go. And here we can see the settings here for this project that I've said create project. There are 3 things required to create a project in Newforma. They all have an asterisk after them. So the name is required. The second thing that's required are the location of the project folder. So this is where we actually point to the top folder on the network that contains the folder structure for that particular project. Now we saw in my trainings, I'm actually pointing to 2 folder structures, and that's fine. That's why this is a big box, because you could actually point to 2 different locations if you had files for that particular project in 2 different locations, that would be fine. You could point to both of them. Um, and like we were talking about, I believe it was yesterday in our training, when you make a project archive in Newforma, you would actually, if you move those folders, this is where you would actually go in, highlight the folder, and then over here it would say repath. It wouldn't say repair broken link, it would say repath. And that's where you could repath that folder to that new location so that Newforma would know to index that in that new location so that you could still see the project in Newforma, you could still search it, you could still run reports. But if it's archived, you would not be able to add anything new. So you wouldn't be able to file emails to it any longer. You wouldn't be able to do file transfers, etc. But you could still go back to that archive project even 5 years down the road and still go back and see the download history from file transfers, all of the email communication, everything, because it's been repathed to that new location. And then the third thing that's required is here on the admin tab, and that is your server. Now that gets filled out automatically by your project creation template. And as we go through this training today, and I'm sure you guys will have internal discussions after today as well, but if there are certain settings that as you're going through creating a project, especially Nadia, if you realize that every time you create a project, you always have to change this setting or that setting or update this or change the default dates or something, you could actually change the project creation template so that going forward, when you create the project from that template, those settings would already be updated. So it would be less data entry for you. You'll also notice that while we're here, we've already updated your templates to be the custom templates, and you don't have any custom templates yet, but this way we already have them referenced. And if you ever do create a template, it will go into a specific place on the network, but it will be referenced here. That way, those updated, custom templates would already be referenced on all of your projects. Now, even though we don't have anything here now, it doesn't break anything. What it does is if we were to run a file transfer right now for this project and we had a transmittal created, it would look first at the custom templates. And if there's nothing in there for the transmittal form that's been customized, Newforma just goes back and uses the default template that came with your purchase of Newforma with your installation. So if there's a form that you're running and it's not customized, it will just go back and use the default template. So you don't have to worry about, oh, well, if we put this in here and it's not customized, it's going to break everything and nothing's going to run. Rest assured, it just goes back and runs that default template. So those are really the only 3 things that are required. So Nadia, if you needed to enter a project super quick for someone, it would just be the name, the location of the project folder, and the server, but the server is already filled out based on your project creation template. So you could just enter those 2 things, save the project, and then go back later and fill out more of the information if you had it. So that way you could get it up and running super quick. We will come back to these settings because these are all of the project administrator settings. So we'll come back to this form. For right now, I'm not going to save this project at all. We'll actually look at a real project, but we'll just close that. So from here, as a global administrator, I can see all of the projects that have been created. I can also modify any of the settings for any of the projects that have been created from here. I can also do it from the project home. So if I'm already here, I can edit it, but I could always go to the project home and edit it from there as well if I'm a global administrator. The servers are listing all of your servers here. So if we take a look at all of your servers, we can see you have an Info Exchange server, which runs your Info Exchange website, your indexing server, your work server that runs all the indexing and work services, and then your Project Center server. And you have a warning on this one. I'm just going to show you that right now. And if you click on the View Errors and Warnings, it's got localized check templates that are causing a warning here. Let's see what these are. In your 12th edition, it looks like the German and French templates. Those are perfectly normal to see, and you have file rename operations that are pending, but it's all warnings, it's not errors, so things are still functioning within Newforma, it's still working just fine. The next time that you reboot the server or you refresh it, it should get rid of this one right here, but it's not causing anything from not occurring in Newforma, so you're okay with that. The other things that we see here, I'm just going to move this down just a little bit, is for this Project Center server, this is going to show us the backup storage location, how many days worth of backups that you're keeping, your company name. So if you ever legally change your company name, you'll want to do it here. Your location, the email address for any kind of sent notification. So when we were talking about creating notifications for file transfers earlier today, and setting up reminders and things like that. Those reminders actually come from this email address. So if you are reminding somebody of something, it will come from this Newforma admin email address. Any kind of notifications for things like running out of space, like you can see down here at the bottom for this server, will go to anyone who is a global administrator. So if you wanted additional people to also get that notification, you could say administrators and a list, and then you could enter other email addresses up here. So we'll take a look at who those administrators are right now. Obviously you are Leslie, but we'll take a look at who else would be listed as a Newforma administrator. On the right side, you can see how many licenses you have, when they expire, that you have enterprise mobile access. So your users can use the enterprise mobile apps, and you don't have access to the Bluebeam add-in, so that's okay. Now the users are 27, and you're like, well, we purchased 25. Why does it say 27? We always give you 2 extra to cover a Newforma login and an IT login, so that we're not utilizing any of your employee licenses. So that's why you see 2 extra there. The notifications and forms, this is where those notifications that are created, like when we saw the shared folder notification, info exchange transfer notification, it automatically creates, Newforma automatically creates those email notifications that go out, and it already had the subject line pre-populated. This is where it comes from. It's item type, item subject, project name. You could also change the order of that. If you're more project name, project number focused, by all means, you could place that at the beginning of the email notification subject line. In this case, it would say like shared folder, current drawings, project ABC. So you could change this around and place those things at the beginning, if you wanted project number hyphen project name to be at the beginning, and then shared folder, whichever you want. So feel free, if you want to change this now, you can let me know. If you guys want to talk about it internally and change it later, this is where you would change it.
I think we are okay with this.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So then our forms are listed here. So these are the default templates. And then, like I said, when you did your configuration and deployment, they set up this custom template folder for you, just in case you ever do customize any of your forms or reports. You do have that folder already created and already referenced in your project creation template, which would be referenced on all of your projects. So if you ever do need to go down that path of learning how to customize your forms, just know that we do offer training for that. We can also send you information from the help, or we can customize it internally for you, and then they can price that out depending on how many forms. Most of the forms are Word-based merge templates. So if you do have someone who has done Word-based merge templates before, usually sending you the information from the customer community is usually enough, especially if you don't have major changes to your forms, that you could probably customize those internally. But we're here to help as well in case you need that. The Info Exchange server runs, obviously, your Info Exchange website. So when we look at what is here, you can see it's got your logo. This is also the logo not only on your Info Exchange website, but also the logo that is pulled onto any of your forms. So if you want something higher resolution or something like that, just know, or if the size isn't quite right, this is where you would change that logo. And it's got the anonymous user access unchecked. That is very common to see it unchecked. And that would just allow anonymous users to log into your project website or see public transfers. In 7 years, I have only had one client that uses that, and they use it for a specific reason. They do a lot of work for their municipality, and so they have open bidding on projects for their contractors and subs, and so they make certain projects available for anonymous user access and public transfers, and that allows people to log in as anonymous just for that project to be able to download some of the specifications and things that they would need to be able to bid on a certain project. So that's really the only instance that I've seen that used. Most people want to be able to control who can log into Info Exchange and download files. The cloud delivery, I skimmed over this during our training today, but just know that you have it turned on globally and at the project level, you can leave it turned on or turn it off. What this allows is that when I send a file transfer to someone, if this is turned on, it says configure cloud storage delivery on the email notification. And if that recipient has Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive, they can say configure cloud storage delivery so that when you send them a file transfer, it automatically downloads those files into their Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive account. They don't have to click to download, it automatically downloads it, and it will show on the change log. So like I said, you can have this on globally and then at the project level, leave it on or turn it off. So you do have that option. Now, if you don't want that at all, you can turn it off here at the global level, and on all of your projects, it will not be available to do. Most people are okay with it because they figure, well, when I send, so-and-so a file transfer, all they're going to do is place it in their Dropbox account anyway. This just saves them a step because once they configure it, the next time you send them a file transfer, it just downloads into their account. They would still get the email notification, but it would just download for them automatically. The warnings that would go for this server to your global administrators would be when you're running out of disk space. Again, so when you're around 20 gigs or less, it will send you an email notification to your global administrators, or when the connection between Project Center and InfoExchange is down. So if that connection between those two servers goes down, it will automatically shoot off an email notification to all of your global administrators. The only other thing within this server that I tend to look at are the terms and conditions. So like we saw today when I sent an email, well, when I sent a transfer to Bob and Bob, went to InfoExchange, it showed the terms and conditions first. They come from here. So if you have different legal wording or verbiage that you would like, feel free to remove all this and place that in there. Anywhere where it says company name, it pulls it from the Project Center server, so you don't have to type it out. And you can also choose how often this shows, whether it's only the first time somebody logs into InfoExchange, the first time that they access a project, or any time that they either click to download from an email or log into InfoExchange, they will always have to accept the terms and conditions before they can download the files or access InfoExchange. This is a global setting, so it is not different per project. It would be for anybody downloading files or accessing InfoExchange. Questions?
I think we're okay.
We're okay.
Nothing from here.
Yep. Okay. So the file transfers, the transfers tab here will show all file transfers that have gone out or come in through InfoExchange for your firm. Usually most administrators don't really need to ever touch this. The only time I've ever seen it really utilized is I had a client who was in, what part of, they are in Alberta, and they had a project manager who left their firm, and they realized soon after he left their firm that every file transfer he sent, he unchecked the expires. So it was taking up a lot of space. And they were starting to get notifications that they were starting to run out of space on their InfoExchange server. And when they came into here, they could filter this by who sent it, when they sent it, and if it had expired, or even if it had an expiration date. And what they did was they highlighted everything that he had sent that was older than 6 months old. They highlighted it all and just said expire. So it's like if you look at the outgoing transfer, you can see here, I can expire it from here as an administrator. They were able to just highlight, I don't even remember how many thousand she said, but they were able to highlight them all and just click expire. And then that way they could free up all that space on their server. So that's about the only time that you would ever need to come in here if you're running out of space to kind of see what's taking up all that space. Plus, you can even sort it by size. So you could say, I want to see everything that hasn't expired that's bigger than, so many gig, and maybe see what's taking up all that space. Otherwise, it's just more informational. The contacts in the company. So the company records, these all are part of that directory that we saw before. You can import from a template. It is the Newforma import template, so it's not importing it from Outlook. A lot of people will export from Outlook, clean it up, put it in the Newforma template, and then import it. There are other clients that just don't add company records until they actually need them. That way they know what's in the directory is being utilized and is accurate. But you would have the ability, And Leslie, you might have to pull this up. Oh, there we go. So if you have Newforma installed on your computer from your hard drive, all of the Newforma templates are under your program files. Let's come down here. Newforma, 12th edition, Project Center. All of the templates are stored here, and they are Excel-based templates. So if you wanted to kind of export that out from Outlook, clean it up, put it in the Newforma template to import either companies or contacts, just know that you can do that. It just needs to be in the format that you'll see on this template for either companies or contacts. So it does have a lot of fields on it, but a lot of them are not required. For companies, I think the only thing required really is company name. So it will give you some information here as to, what's required, what's not required, and you could just include whatever you want. Like I said, a lot of people just don't add company or contact records until they actually need them. And I'll leave this up. I'm not going to close out of that screen, Leslie. So if you need to bookmark that on your screen as well. Within a company record, though, just to show you, if we click on the modify, like there's some formatting things here. Some are in all caps, some aren't. So you might want to determine that. Oh, I like how you gave you guys a 5-star. That's awesome. So your company here, your web address if you need it, spec section, discipline, main contact, none of these fields are required, just name. Obviously, you can give people a rating. You can also indicate what type of company that they are. This is what we call a keyword list. It is customizable in Newforma, and you'll see a couple tabs away are all the keyword lists. So as a global administrator, I could determine what is in this dropdown. So if you do want to start tracking companies by what type of company they are, whether they're a mechanical engineer or they're GC or what owner, whatever it happens to be, you could go ahead and add that into that company record and delete things maybe that you aren't going to use. And then that way it's a little more appropriate for maybe what you need. Also, if a company has more than one location, you don't add them multiple times. You just add all of the addresses here for that particular company. And then if there are any company notes, the project assignments will fill in automatically if the company is related to the project, or if a contact who is associated to the company is added to the team, the project will also fill in. It's a nice way, just as a top-down view of a company, to see all of the projects that they have been involved in without having to go through every single project. So it just fills in automatically. And then like we saw with our info exchange transfers, the change log is here for the company record as well. So you can see who changed what and when and what they changed it from and to. So we can see the admin changed it from 0 to 5 for your star rating. So that's awesome. Okay, so if you happen to import records or you realize that 2 of the records that you have in here are really the same company and maybe they were just different addresses or something, you could, like I have a couple of them here. I'm not going to finish this process, but just to show you, I could highlight both of them and say merge, and I could choose which one I want to keep and say, okay, it would merge all of the historical data into that one record. So I could do that to kind of clean up if I do have duplicates and things like that. I could go ahead and do that. Like you have some in here where it's different. These are probably all the same. You could just do that over and over again to kind of pull it into one record so that when a user does a lookup or something, or when you're adding a project and you're adding the company to the project, you wouldn't see Primetals Technologies in there like 7 times. You would only see it in there once so that you can kind of clean up those records after the fact. The contacts work in very much the same way. You'll have contacts that are both internal as well as external. And we'll pick on you today, Leslie, so we'll just come to the modify. And there is no rating on contacts. Sometimes I wish I could give ratings on contacts, but here, if we take a look at our contact record, the only thing really required on a contact is email address. So if like in the US, a lot of times we'll have like William and Bill. Well, if we add William in and then somebody goes to add Bill in, because the email address would be the same, it will tell us that the record already exists and ask us if we just want to update that record. So it will check for email address to determine if it is the same person. And we have, the company, the association here. So this is where you associate the person to the company. So we have all those companies in here. And then, of course, because you have an address in there, you could automatically associate the person to the address. This is really helpful if, say, your Hamilton office moved to another location. You would just update the company record and it would flow through to all of the contact records that are associated to that office. So just saving you a little time and effort. You also have the ability to add in mobile, work, home, fax number. I don't know how many people have fax numbers anymore, but you can associate those new phone numbers to that particular contact. And then this bottom part is key. So if you are somebody that maintains the contacts in Newforma, when somebody leaves a company, whether or not they go work at another company, you will come into their existing contact record. You will uncheck the show in contact list. So when somebody is adding people to a team, they would no longer see the inactive records or the ones that are unchecked as show in contact list. So they wouldn't accidentally choose somebody who has left a company. And you would make them inactive, which would automatically break their link to any projects that they had web access to. So that way you wouldn't have to worry about somebody logging in with an old email address and accessing project information that maybe they should no longer be able to access. Now, when they go work at a new location or a new company, you would not modify this old record. You would simply add a new record for them. That way there's a clear line in the sand. When this person was with this company, these are all the projects that they worked on. When they are with this company, these are all the projects that they worked on and had access to. That way you have a clear delineation between those. Now for this contact, I can also see any contact notes. The project assignments, just like with the company record, will fill in automatically as this person is added to a project team. It will fill in the project association here. And then as the record gets changed and saved, you can see who changed it, when they changed it, what they changed it from and to. I'm not going to save those changes. Now, if you happen to import your contacts using the import contacts from template, then if you happen to import duplicates, just like with the company, and again, I'm not going to save this, but you could merge contacts that are truly the same person at the same company and choose which one you want to keep. It would move all of that historical data over. Questions on companies or contacts?
I do have one, Lori.
Sure.
Can multiple contacts or projects be selected in one go and be edited?
So you can't really modify these, I don't think. If I right click on it, I can change certain field values if I have multiples highlighted. So I could change like company, but things like mailing address, maybe not, wouldn't be really appropriate to change for multiple people at one time, maybe. If I wanted to turn them off as show in contact list, I could do that.
Okay.
So things like that I could change. For the companies, I believe I have those same functions in there as well. If I have multiples highlighted, I could say change field value with a right click and change certain things. So if I wanted to add in discipline or show in company list, yes or no, or change spec section. But a lot of these fields aren't required anyway, so a lot of people just don't fill them out anyway. But you do have some things that you could change, Nadia.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The licensing would be for all of your internal users. So for everybody at J&E that is going to be using Newforma, this is the licensing that they have. So if we take a look at you again, Leslie, like I said, we're going to pick on you today. If I highlight that and I say modify, you'll see here that we have professional user is the first thing. So for all internal users, you have to at least be a professional user, which means that you can access all projects that are made available to you. You can file emails to them. You can do file transfers, action items, those kinds of things. But unless you have the contract manager and the financial manager checked, you can't do anything in the CM or the CA module. So RFIs, submittals, contracts, change orders, all of that you would not be able to do unless you have one or both of these checked. And the difference between the two is that if I also have financial manager checked, I can do anything that has dollars associated. So um, contracts, change orders, change order proposals, potential change orders. I could do all of those. If I only have contract manager checked and not financial manager checked, I can still do things like RFIs, submittals, addenda, bulletins, supplemental instructions, CCDs, no problem, because those do not have a dollar value related in the form. So if someone has access to contract management, they either have one checked or both checked. So if you do have, like I said, delineation of who can see dollars and who can't, that would determine who sees both of these checked or only one. The document controller, I know we haven't talked document control, but it's a way that we manage revisions of files within Newforma. If I do not have this checked, I can still access the activity center. I can still see what's been issued and all of the revisions, but I can't change anything. I would need to have document controller checked. So that would allow me to add revisions of files, issue revisions of files, create packages within document control. I would pretty much have all access to that. But again, if I don't have it checked, I can still access it. I just can't change anything and I can't issue anything through document control. Bluebeam you don't have, so that's not available, so that's okay. This is where we get to the higher level permissions. So this is where we have our project creators, our content administrators, which are people that can modify contacts and companies that already exist. So if I don't have that checked, I can still see the contacts, I can still add contacts, but I can't modify existing contacts or companies. And I definitely cannot merge contacts or companies together. And then a global administrator would have all of these checked and would it be able to access and change any of the project center administration, as well as would be a project administrator on all projects. So by default, no problem. And we'll take a look at who has this in just a second. The middle section right here, we did not talk about this during our training today because I don't know whether you guys are going to turn this on, but like we use the Outlook add-in to send files related to a project, if I have this checked, this allow personal transfers, I can still use the Outlook add-in to send a file transfer, but I can send one that is not related to a project. So if you have someone who is administrative or HR or marketing, and you're not going to have a project in Newforma to handle those types of things, but they need to send files out, they would be able to send it as a personal transfer and not have it related to a project. You can set up projects for anything in Newforma. So if you wanted to have an HR or marketing project that you wanted to make confidential to just that one or two people, by all means, you could still do that. But if you didn't want to do that, you could set up personal transfers so that they would be able to send out large batches of files that are not related to a project in Newforma. Likewise, with that, along the same lines is an upload file link. A lot of times I see this related to, say, a marketing person or an HR person, that they have their own personal link that they can send to anyone that they can use to upload files to that particular person. But again, it is not related to a project at all. So recently I saw this with a HR person at a firm that she had it in her email signature, you know, interested in working for us, upload your resume here. That way it's in a very secure way that that person can upload their resume to her directly. It's not related to a project in Newforma, but it's a really nice way that they don't have to worry about file size limitations or anything. And she would just get an email notification anytime someone used her personal link to send her files. Same with marketing. You know, if they're soliciting files from people, they can just send that their own personal link to anyone they choose. But again, when those files come in, they are not related to a project in Newforma. And then last but not least here would be the force email filing. So if I have somebody who is a problem child who forgets to file their email to projects, I can turn this on, and anytime that they click send within Outlook instead of send and file in project, they automatically get the pop-up. And at the bottom, there are two buttons. They would choose the project and say send and file, or if they don't want to file that to a project, it's an email that's just not related to a project, or they don't want to file it, they have a button that says send and do not file. So they can still send emails that are not related to projects, but every single time they click send, that pop-up will come up. And then you could always turn it off later if they say, yeah, I get it, I have to file my email. It's good to kind of get them in the habit sometimes. And then once they're filing their email and they're used to it, you could then turn it off. But, if you do have that problem child who does forget to file their email, by all means, you can go ahead and turn that on. Now, in looking at the settings that you have here, we can see the administrators. It looks like Glenn, your Newforma admin, and Leslie are all set to be global administrators. And then you have some other content administrators in here. So if we look at this, we could see Alex and Nadia are also set to be content administrators. So they could add, modify companies and contacts, no problem. They're also set to be project creators as well. So you do have a backup for Nadia. Alex is a backup, as well as Glenn and Leslie. You can also set up projects as well. And then when you're ready to roll out the contract management part of Newforma, you could easily just highlight everybody and say modify, and then check the boxes as you need to if you wanted to modify multiple people at one time. Okay, so down at the bottom, it will tell you how many licenses you have, how many are in use, how many you have remaining, as well as which modules you have enabled. So you have the whole shebang, right? So you have the contract manager and the BIM manager. So the BIM, which is the project information like Navisworks, all of that. So you have all of that enabled for your firm. Keywords. These are all of the drop downs and lookups that are available to be modified, and you can even add new ones if you choose. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because when we start rolling out the contract management, we will revisit this because it comes up a lot in contract management. But just know, like when we were looking at company type, I can simply highlight it, say modify, and this is where I could add things, remove things, and I can even drag and drop them to place them in a different order in the drop down if I want to. So by all means, you can remove anything that's in here, you can add anything you want, and you can place them in any order that you would like. And then once you change it, all you'd have to do is down here on the bottom right, this save changes will become available, and once you save it, it's rolled out. You don't have to wait for a nightly update or anything along those lines to affect that change. So we'll go ahead and remove that. There we go. Like I said, a lot is in here. Most of it relates to contract management. The global settings were discussed during your deployment and configuration. Basically, if you have other email servers, project email addressing, or EDMS, so electronic data management systems, like Bentley, ProjectWise, FileNet, SharePoint, those kinds of things you would have linked there already. Your custom fields, you have 4 places within Newforma that you can add custom fields. Some common examples would be, does this contact get a holiday card? Or does the company get a holiday card? Other things in contacts might be, is this person licensed? If so, what's their license number? When does it expire? Project settings might be for the project if you want to track square footage, number of floors, those kinds of things, or project team, individual settings within people that are on the project team. If you're already tracking a lot of these things in a separate software and you're happy with it, I wouldn't bother duplicating it in Newforma. However, if it's something that you're tracking on a spreadsheet and you want to be able to report on it a little bit easier, you might want to add it in Newforma. It's as simple as saying modify, add field, can name it whatever you want. It can be any of these types of fields, yes, no, date, time, email address, text, any of those types of things. You can always determine what a default value is. So if it was like a checkbox, you could say unchecked is the default. And then you just add it to the columns so that when we were looking at companies and contacts, it would show in the columns automatically, yes or no. And if you want to make it available on Info Exchange, and then, so like if we said, let's say holiday card, and I'll go ahead and delete this after we create it, but we would make it like a yes, no, unchecked is the default. add it to the columns, and then we would just place it on, because it's going to create a separate tab in the record. We would place it, let's say, on the left side, say OK, save changes. And then when we go to our contacts, let me just refresh this. Probably added it all the way to the right. We'll see holiday card is now a column here. And within the record itself, which means you can filter, sort, search by it. But within the record itself, there is now a custom fields tab with holiday card as a checkbox, and it is unchecked by default. So just to give you an example of some things that you can add in there, I'll go ahead and remove this. No problem. But other, you could add in really anything that you need there. Square footage, if it's small business owned, that kind of thing. Sometimes we track within the project settings, etc. But like I said, if you're already tracking it in another software and you're happy with it, I wouldn't bother duplicating it in Newforma. Just more data entry that way. Okay, security would be for info exchange. So this is the info exchange access for internal and external people for the project website. By default, if you are a user and you're added to a project team and given web access, you're automatically indicated as an internal user, which means that for all of the activity centers you see, I see all, and everything that is available for me to do, I can also do. So I can add action items, I can send file transfers, I can create RFIs or submittals, things like this. But I can see all of these items for projects that I would have access to on Info Exchange. So again, added to the team, given web access. External people, so if you were to add me to a project team and give me web access, I would be indicated as an external team member, and my access is a little bit different. So this is where, for all of these activity centers, I only see things that I'm named on or given access to. And for things like action items, I can create them. I can edit ones that I can see, but I can't close them. I can send in RFIs or submittals. I can send in file transfers. And even for project emails, like I showed you guys earlier today, I can only see the ones that I'm named on. So emails that I either sent or I was a recipient, and they were also filed to the project. So it does still have that level of security that I'm not exposing the folders and I'm only seeing things that I'm named on, which means I've already seen them before, right? I've gotten email notifications or I sent it in. If you ever do need to create a more or less restrictive permission set, you can say add similar or add new. And then within that permission set, you would just come to modify. And like for email, if you didn't want people to see email at all, even if they were named on it, you could just say modify, do not show any. And then that way, even if they had web access to the project, when they log in, they wouldn't see any filed project email. Even if they were named on it, they still wouldn't see it. So just to give you an idea of those, it puts the defaults here for when you add an internal or external person. If you were to create additional permission sets, you might determine that a more restrictive permission set is what you want the default to be for external people. You would just choose it from the drop down here, and then that way people wouldn't have to remember to change that permission set when they add people to the team. The Info Exchange password settings, this is for your external people when they get that email notification that they've been added to a team and given web access and they're given that link to set up their password. This is what the protocol is for setting up their password. I would highly suggest it's more than one character, but totally up to you. So you can set it to expire, you can set it to be alphanumeric, mixed case. Leslie, if you want to take controls and change that, I'm totally fine with that. So 8 characters, mixed case, alphanumeric.
Yeah, usually mixed case, alphanumeric. We also do special characters. Do we care about expiration, Nadia?
I'm sorry, Les? No.
No? Okay.
Okay, then with those changes, I would say just say save changes in the lower right, Les, and then that way we can just save those. Cool. Okay. Any other questions on the global administration before we move on to the project settings?
Laurie, one question.
Sure.
When we are giving rights to external user, you have certain fields defined like RFI, action log, etc., etc. How
Mhm.
about certain things as project roles, the, the contact information? Is it something that the externals can view and edit?
No. So
Add
when we're looking at the external user, you'll notice it'll say that they can create a submittal or an RFI, but they're not editing them. The only way that they would, and it's really not even editing, but if you had, say, a submittal that you forwarded to, like, say, me, I'm external. If you forwarded a submittal to me for review, I could provide my review response, but I wouldn't see what was sent in to you originally because I wasn't named on it. I would only see what you forward to me. And I would not be able to change what you forwarded to me. I would only be able to see what you forwarded to me and provide a review response through Info Exchange, but I wouldn't be able to change any of the other details in there.
just for fun, another question. Can an external user at least see the project team? Like there's no such
Yep.
field over here with
Yeah. So they would see the team. And when we add, and that's a really good question because I didn't really talk about that when we were talking about team. So if we go back to our all projects and let's say that we look at, let's just pick a project here.
Oh,
And
maybe the first one, the better example. We just added a number of people, and we were playing with that. That says Palmer. That's the one.
perfect. So if I come into this project and I look at the team, when you add someone to a team, so let's just look at Alex here. And you're on here twice. Oh, because you're probably testing it as an external person. When we look at the project team, when you add someone here, you get a pop-up that looks similar to this when you're giving them web access and things like this. This is what determines whether other people that are using Info Exchange are able to see this person. So the drop down is visible to all external team members. It shows the name, the company, and the email, but it does not show the phone number. You would have to physically choose all external team members and show all information. Then it would also show their phone number. And then, or if you wanted it to be only fellow company members and internal people, or hide them from all other external people. Internal people, all of you, would always see the whole project team, even on Info Exchange. But external people, this is whether other external people see them and what they see for that other external person. Because,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
got a quick question here. So we were playing with this today, and we changed these settings here,
Yep.
but we haven't noticed anything changes on the Info Exchange. So it could be some sort of a lag before this information take changes. But I even said in some cases I even removed the user from the Info Exchange, and then it was me logged in as an external user. But then I still had the access to the Info Exchange. So is there
So
some time
as an internal person, you will always see everything, even if the team member does not have Info Exchange access.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, I was logged as external user with a completely different username and password,
Right?
and yeah, I was logged as that first part, like a test company,
Right?
and then on client on this page, I even unchecked this box that says allow web access to this project on your Info Exchange for myself. Of
So
course, not all that.
do you want to show me what you did? Because it's getting
Okay,
a lot of cross here. So if you were looking at,
and
say,
the
an
first one,
external
yes,
person
yes,
and you modify them,
and I modified this.
okay, and
So
here on
I
the
went
project
to
roles
role,
and permissions, you remove them from Info Exchange
uncheck.
access.
That's right, and I click OK.
Okay. Are you also doing this part as well or no?
And I was changing that, yes, because what I would like to do is I would like that all external users
Mm-hmm.
see the mobile and phone numbers. So basically, it would be show all information.
Okay.
But for some reason, I couldn't see any changes. That's the problem on the Info Exchange website.
Okay, so if you change this
Then
and
you
you
go
say
there.
okay, and then you log in as an internal person. So let's go back and log in as an internal person. And I don't want to get down too far of a rabbit hole on here.
Yeah, right.
If we log in here through Info Exchange, so it probably popped up on your other screen or through here. Here we go. Can you bring that other from the other screen over, Les? Okay, so log into Info Exchange.
Oh, can you give me okay, I do have, can I log in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So as an internal person, right?
Don't have he doesn't have mouse control.
Oh, do I want to give Alex? Oh,
Yeah.
so we could
Okay,
probably do it as we could probably do it
so
as you, Les.
but it seems there's a little bit of lag between those two until the changes take effect.
There
on
usually
the,
is about a 2-minute lag between what you do in here and what is available on
Okay.
Info Exchange because it has to go from server to server.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
that's normal. That's normal. And then we don't have you on here, Les. So I don't know if you wanted to check that. Did you want to did you want to add yourself and then log into Info Exchange?
As a what? Like just create a
No, as an
external account?
Yeah, internal person. So like if we just say join the project team, because we can always remove you. So we say join the project team and we give you web access. We say okay.
Oh. Add him as external user and not internal.
External on the top one because it's a different email address, Nadia. And all of the, and if there's anybody else in here that's J&E that shows as external user, it's probably because they hadn't opened Newforma before when you added them to the team. So sometimes that's also a difference because you'll want to make sure that you actually open Newforma before you add them to a team. Okay, so Leslie, if you want to go ahead and log into Info Exchange, just your username and password, you shouldn't need your email address unless that's how you log into your computer in the morning.
No.
There's a
Okay, so if we come here to the all projects.
The top one.
Yeah, see, it hasn't updated yet. So it usually takes about 2 minutes. So if we come back, we'll give it a couple minutes. We'll come back to it, okay?
Okay, sounds fine.
Okay, so we'll go back to our project settings and then we'll come back to there. Okay, so the edit project settings only shows if you are a global administrator or if at the project level you were given access to be a project administrator for this project. Otherwise, the edit project settings will not show. Okay, so the settings here are the same one. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just see if we have that. So basically, I go to, where did I go? So we go to edit project settings. I believe this is something that probably Nadia needs. How to get to this screen again?
Yep, so either from the global administration or from the project home, you'll see edit project settings underneath the tasks.
So project home, let's go to project home, and it's supposed to say we don't have that one.
Which means that on that project, you are not a project administrator.
So is there a way to just add the 2 person under the project as project administrators?
A project administrator would need to do it, but yes, you can add people after the fact. So if you wanted
Okay.
to add them on this particular project, then on the admin tab, you would need to come down here where it says project administration. And instead of just
Okay.
global administrators only, you would say global administrators and project center users and edit.
Okay.
And then you would add the people that you would want to give access to this project as a project administrator. So who do we need to add? Alex?
Well, I would say Alex and Nadia,
Well,
and
Nadia's
that's
already a
project related.
Alex and Nadia. Okay, so Alex and Nadia, and then global administrators, Leslie, you're already a global administrator, so you already have it. But here we would just say, okay, okay, okay. And then if you refresh your screen, so when you're on the project home, if you click the refresh up here at the very top, if you click that, then you should have the edit project settings there.
That's correct. I think that's what we want.
Okay.
Excellent.
And then when you set up the project, Nadia, you could just go ahead and add yourself as a project administrator if you wanted to. Okay, so the project settings here, like I said, this is what a project administrator would have access to on this particular project to be able to change. So the things that we see here on the project information would be the project name, the project number. Obviously, project name is required. Description, project manager, principal in charge, none of these are required. The primary company roles. So this is where you associate the company to the project. So in this case, you could say add, choose your company, and then you can choose what role you are performing on this particular project. Again, this is a keyword list, so it can be modified. Pretty much every dropdown and lookup within Newforma is a keyword list, so you can modify it as a global administrator. So you would choose whatever role. What role are you performing on this project as your firm, J&E?
We are consultant, MEP. MEP consultant.
Oh, okay. So there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so that way I can add this here. And then that way it also links back to the company record to add this project to that project assignments tab. It would add it in there as well. Then if you had your client in there, you could choose the project site from the dropdown, but you could also manually enter it. And that would only really be if you needed to pull it into a form or a report or something like that. You could have this in here. The main contact for the project, if you wanted to do a contact lookup and add that person here. The client's project number. So if you were tracking your client's project number, you could have that in here as well. Again, none of these are required. Confidential. You have 3 selections here for confidential. Confidential no means everybody internally can see this project. Confidential yes, you have 2 options. Either only administrators for this project could see the project, or project team access, meaning only people on the project team could see this particular project. So, and you can always change this. So if you were chasing a job, you could set it up as confidential, yes, project team access. And then when you win it, maybe you change it to confidential, no, so that everybody could see the project. You also have different statuses here. Obviously, opportunity as you're chasing the project, active when it's an active project, and then archive. If you archive something and maybe you archive it too soon, you could change it back to active and then re-archive it later if you needed to. Your phases, these are also a keyword list. So if you wanted to track phase of the project within Newforma, you could choose the phase of the project from the dropdown. Same with type of project. This is also a keyword list. Both of these are. So you could change what's in the lookup or the dropdown. This is helpful if you have a lot of projects and you want to say, well, how many active projects do we have by type? You could run a report to show you by type how many active projects that you have. The currency, Canadian dollars, your latitude and longitude. If you have it and you want to enter it, it populates a small map on Info Exchange that people can click on to get the actual coordinates and location of a project. GPS is usually pretty good these days, so you probably don't need it. Your project image, if you wanted to attach an image like you saw on my project home today, you can also modify this. So if you had a rendering and then maybe a current site photo, it would add it into the project home as well as the Info Exchange website.
Good.
Okay. Your project folders, this is where we question?
No, we are okay.
Okay, so the project folders, this is where you point to the top folder on the network for the folders for this project. So that folder and everything under it is what gets indexed for this project. Of course, if you had files in a different location, you could say add folder and point to that location as well. But you have to have one that is primary because that's where it knows to place all of these other Newforma items in that location underneath the primary folder. So earlier, Nadia, when you were asking me where the transmittals go, you actually have a Newforma record copies folder, and then underneath of that, it will have subfolders by item type, and that's where it places the transmittal PDFs as well as any record copies. This is also where it determines where the emails go, and the emails will be separated by month. Like they are in mine, it will be year-month, and then it will place any filed project emails under the appropriate month. Then once you get to start using punch list and field notes, if you have any media like photos and things, they will automatically go under these folders as well.
So Lori, I do have a quick question here.
Sure.
Store project email in Newforma email. So finally, I know where to find this. I was trying to find how to save the emails specifically for this project. So now I know that. But the other question is, it tells me that I don't have rights to write in this folder. So I tried to save a couple of emails, but for some reason I couldn't file them in this Newforma email folder.
Okay, so are you doing that through the drag and drop or the file in project?
I tried to do directly from Outlook,
right?
The add-on that we have, and just file them.
So when you're looking here, so let's look at your email. So if you want to drag that over for me.
Oh, it won't work. It's less over there, but let's see.
So here, if you're doing the emails from here, are you doing the file in project up here?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and it's telling you that you don't have access to it, so that would mean that you don't have read-write access, which you need to have read-write access to that folder to be able to file the emails to that particular folder. So on your network, it's been restricted that you don't have write access, and you will need to, as will everybody else. So if they need to file emails to that project, it needs to be open for everybody to write to that folder and read from that folder so that you can file emails to the project and you can search for those emails within Newforma. Otherwise, you won't be able to see them or file to them.
But isn't this a folder that Newforma automatically generates?
It is. So I don't know why that setting would be any different unless the Newforma folder in general was hidden from you. So that would be a really good question for your technical consultant. So I don't know whether you had Justin or Michael.
What was the project? 0360
0360 601 602.
601602. Yep.
1602.
The Newforma folder.
Newforma and the email. So that's the folder.
Okay. So this was automatically created, I mean, obviously through the thing. So obviously it doesn't have the right permission in there.
Right. So I would check with your technical consultant, because when that's created automatically, it should automatically have the correct permissions in there, and they would be able to help steer you in the right direction on that one.
Okay. So okay, that's fine. So I can reach out and talk to him tomorrow. I'll get Glenn to fix the other project folder, so
Sure.
At least you'll be able to read and write. Now, I mean, is that true for all these folders?
Anything under the Newforma folder, from that folder and below, it should always be read-write.
Unless, just for record, I even checked the record copies folder, it would not let me save a transmittal in there.
Right, because you don't have read-write access to it.
We need to define the rights over here, just like we do for our project folders.
But
Okay.
since it's created automatically, it should already have those correct settings, which is why I'm steering you towards your technical consultant, because that would be something they could help you with the project creation.
Okay,
No
yeah.
problem.
So we just fixed it manually for now, but we'll talk to the technical guy.
Yeah, just so that going forward, the projects are set up correctly. So I'll just minimize this. Okay.
Yep.
So our activities, these are all of the activity centers that are available, and this is what shows on the project home. If there were ever any that you know for this project or for your firm that you would not use, you can just drag and drop them to the left side so that they stay hidden. That way it just makes it easier for your day-to-day users. For example, if you were never going to use, I don't know, change orders, that way you could just have it hidden and people don't get confused when they see like every single activity center and they're like, why does this show? I don't know what this is. That way you can just have it hidden in advance. And again, when we do the workflow consultation for contract management, we will revisit this again. So just know that we'll come back to that. The admin, obviously the server is filled out, the templates we already talked about. The item reminders are turned on, which means that you do have the ability to set up reminders for this project. And this is what names the folder in Outlook when you add a project to the My Projects. When it creates the folder in Outlook to help you file your email, this is how it's going to name that folder. So you do have a couple of options in here: project name, project number, and then various options within that. So if everybody is project number focused, this is fine. And then down at the bottom, we already went through how we add additional people as project administrators for this project. And then, of course, if you wanted to lock down the project to only administrators being able to modify the project team, modify any of the timeline items like phases and milestones, or deleting items, you could restrict it to just administrators that would be able to delete items from this project. So if you do need to lock it down a little more securely, by all means, you can do any of those three. The info exchange options, this is what determines which activity centers are available on the info exchange website for this particular project. Now, this works in conjunction with the permission sets that we saw. So even if you assign me a permission set as an external user and it has all of those activity centers and it says, show only items the team member is on, like email. If in the project you take the email here and you move it over to the hidden, even though my permission says that I see emails, I won't see them for this project because on the project level, they're hidden. But they would also be hidden from anyone else accessing the project on Info Exchange. So they work kind of as a two-level permission as to whether or not the activity center even shows. And then the permission set says, well, if they see the activity center, what do they see within that activity center for this project? So you have those options. The public transfers, like we turned off globally, it is not available here at the project level. The hide recipients on all transfers and transmittals, every single transfer that you send through Info Exchange for this project, if you have this checked, all of your external people will be treated as a blind carbon copy. Every single transfer would be that way. I can't change it. But we saw today when I'm sending a transfer on my own, I can choose to check that. This would just make every transfer that way. The same here, require people to log in. Every single transfer, the email notifications would still go, but they would always have to log in to download files. Like I said, when I do a standard transfer, I can choose that option on my transfer versus every transfer. User credentials for shared folder. This just allows that synchronization to occur. Even if I don't have Newforma open, even if I'm not logged into my system, it will verify me as an active user. And then that way the synchronization will continue to occur. Requiring a transmittal on every single transfer. If you check this box, I don't get that first pop-up that says, do I want to include a transmittal or not? It will just include one. And if I am including a transmittal, in this case, it will have it in the body of the email listed as a file that is being transferred. So unlike when I did my transfer today and the transmittal was attached, it would actually be listed in the files that are being transferred. It just helps alleviate any kind of pushback from any email domain that you might be sending something to that It quarantines things that have attachments as potential spam or what have you. This way, it's just listed as a hyperlink within the email itself, and you have less chance of it being quarantined. The direct download links for incoming notifications. So if somebody sends me a file transfer, I can download directly from the email itself. I don't have to be in Newforma, and I can automatically download incoming transfers if I want. So if I set it up for myself, I can have it automatically download those. And then the cloud delivery, like we talked about, if somebody has Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive, with this on, when you send them a file transfer, they will have the configure cloud storage delivery option. And if they configure it, every time you send them a file transfer, it just downloads the files directly to, say, their Dropbox account. That way they don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about them having to always download and then place it on their Dropbox. It would just download to their Dropbox account. It will still show it as downloaded on the change log, though. The record copies are being created every time you do a record document issuance. I know we haven't talked about document control, but if you're issuing a set of drawings at a certain stage of the project, it will automatically create a record copy. It's optional for your transfers with a transmittal, and your shared folders. At any time, you could change these to be required, or on an individual, say, transfer, I can have a record copy created at the same time. This is really useful if you know that you'll need to go back to the exact files that you sent at the time of transfer. You would be able to go to that point in time and be able to access those exact files. But again, it does make a duplicate of those files and does store it in your folder structure on your network, so it is taking up space. The default expiration for your file transfers is 30 days, but I showed you how you could always change that expiration date. And again, when we talk about contract management, we'll circle back to this one, but if you're closing out, say, an RFI or submittal and you send it through InfoExchange, by default, that transfer does not expire. That way, if somebody needed to go back 3 months later and see what you said when you closed out a submittal, you wouldn't have to reactivate the transfer because it would still be active. But again, we'll kind of talk about that in greater detail when we do our workflow consultation. The same with this tab. The vast majority of this is related to contract management in relationship to due dates, numbering. I'll just take action items as an example because it's not contract management, but this is where you could determine how project to-dos are numbered, what number it starts with, does it have a prefix based on type of action item, what is the default due date out of the box, is it business or calendar days, and then all of the keyword lists that are applied to that particular activity center. This way, if you needed to go back and modify an activity center, or sorry, a keyword list for a particular activity center, and somebody just said, oh yeah, when I was in action items, I didn't like what it said in this dropdown. Can we add X, Y, and Z? At least you kind of know which activities, which keyword lists are applied in that activity center. So you kind of know where to start if you're going to be modifying any of those keyword lists. The timeline relates to all of the timeline or meeting types here within Newforma. By all means, you can remove, add, modify any of these existing. How would phases and milestones show on the calendar? Are they color coded a certain way? And the keyword list that's applied here. And then the other project list would be all of the other keyword lists that are applied to this particular project. Just in case you need to modify them or replace them with a different custom keyword list, you could do that as well. The send via and receive via, we tend to use this a lot in contract management. If you need to manage the closing out of a contract management item and you need to upload to somebody else's third-party website like Procore, Submittal Exchange, eBill, Kahua, whatever it happens to be, you could go ahead and add it in here so that you could start that transfer in Newforma and upload to that third-party website as one workflow instead of two. So again, when we circle back to contract management, we will definitely talk about this, and I'll even show you an example of that when we go through that meeting. A lot in the brain. I know you guys have had training today twice with me, but if you have any questions, let me know. So I know that's why we also record it, so we can always circle back to this.
I'm okay.
I'm okay. I think this was great. I do have two quick questions.
Sure. First, we're going to check the team. So let's see if we can get into that project.
Let's see.
We'll see if we can refresh this. See if that, there we go.
Okay.
There's that project. And then here you could say view.
Project team.
Yeah. I'm losing my mind. Where'd it go? There we go. Project team.
There we go.
And then this way I can see the email address, the business phone, the mobile phone.
Good.
Even for the person that does not have web access, I can still see their contact information.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think we
And I
learned a
can
lot
even
today.
export it, just so you guys know, I can also export it into an Excel spreadsheet or PDF if I wanted to be able to have access to it offline.
Excellent.
Okay, other questions? I know you had two more.
Yes. Okay. So, well, the other questions are more of next steps.
Sure.
They're not really related to this training. So I'm just gonna. So, Les, do you have any